Hello, everybody. Welcome to another storytelling session. The story for today is going to be a story that comes out of Eastern Africa, somewhere near the Zimbabwe region, and it was written down by a man by the name of John Steptoe, and the story is called Mufaro's Beautiful Daughters. Once, long ago, in Africa, there was a man named Mufaro, and Mufaro had two daughters. There was Manyara, the older, and Nyasha, the younger. Now, Manyara lived with his two daughters in a village that was about a half a day's walk from the capital of their area where the king lived. And everyone said that Manyara and Nyasha were very beautiful girls. But everyone also agreed that Nyasha was very kind and very gentle, and Manyara seemed to always be in a little bit of a bad mood. She was just always a little cranky. And whenever her father was not around, Manyara would be kind of mean to Nyasha, and she would tell her that someday I am going to be the queen, and you are going to be a servant in my household, and that's what's going to happen someday. And Nyasha would say to her, well, if that is what is going to happen, sister, then I will be happy to serve you. But I do not understand why you are so mean and so cranky all the time. You have everything you need here, and everyone likes you, so I do not understand why you are like this. And Manyara would say, well, I am certain that father likes you best. Everyone says that you're so kind and so gentle, and they all like you better than me. Nyasha was always very sad when her sister said things like this, but she didn't like to bother her father with it. She didn't think it was very important. And so she would just smile a little sadly, and she would go on her way. Well, Nyasha had a little vegetable garden that she had near the edge of the village, and she liked to go there and work. And she grew yams and millet and sunflowers and things like that people that were good to eat. And when she would go and she would work in the garden, she always sang all the time while she was working in the garden. And people liked to say that it was her singing that made her vegetables that much better than everyone else's. Well, one day, as Nyasha was working and singing in her garden, she looked down and she saw a little garden snake on the ground. And she said, well, hello, little friend. You are very welcome to stay here, for I know that having you here will keep away all the pests that will ruin my vegetables. You may stay as long as you like, little Nyoka. And after that, every time Nyasha would go to the garden to work in the garden, there would be little Nyoka, and she would smile and she would pat him on the head and she would sing. And it is said that she sang even more sweetly when Nyoka was listening than when she was working in the garden all by herself. Well, one day when Manyara and Nyasha were grown up, a message came to their village from the capital city. And the messenger said, the king has decided that he needs a wife. And he wants all the most worthy and most beautiful girls in the land to come to the capital, and he will pick one for his wife. Well, that was quite an exciting piece of news, and Mufaro rather, said to his daughters, you are both beautiful, and you are both so very worthy, and only a king could choose between the two of you. Come, get your best dresses on, and I will gather a wedding party of our friends, and tomorrow at sunrise we will go to the capital city. Well, Manyara said, Father, it would hurt both of us to leave you. And and it's such a long journey, and it would be so difficult. And, well, Father, I think it would actually kill Nyasha to be separated from you. I can be brave. I will go to the capital city. You should just let Nyasha stay here with you. I think that would be best." And Mufaro just smiled very large at her, and he said, "No, Manyara, no. You are both beautiful, and you are both so worthy. How could I possibly choose between the two of you? Obviously, only a king can choose the better of the two of you. So we will both go. You will both go to the capital city, and the king will choose between the most worthy and most beautiful daughters in the land." Well, Manyara was not happy with that idea. And so as soon as the sun went down and everyone else went to bed, she crept out of the house and she slipped into the forest. Now she was a little scared because she'd never been in the forest at night alone before. So she hurried through the forest and she tried to ignore all of the little noises and things that she was hearing. And as she went through the forest, suddenly there was a little boy standing there on the road in front of her. And he held out a hand and he said, "Please, please, I am very hungry. Do you have something that I could eat?" And Manyara said, "Seriously? I am going to be your queen, and you are asking me for food? You're dirty, and you're a boy. Get out of my way." And he said, "But please, please, haven't you any food?" And she said, "I only brought enough for myself. Step aside, boy. I'm going to be your queen tomorrow." And she hurried off down the road. Well, as Manyara came up to a place where two roads crossed, she saw an old woman sitting there. And the old woman said, "I am going to give you some advice, Manyara. When you come down this road a bit further, you will find a grove of trees, and they will appear to be laughing at you. You must not laugh back. And when you go a little bit further down the road, you will see a man who has his head tucked under his arm. You must be polite to him." And Manyara said, "How do you know my name? You ugly old woman, how dare you give me advice? I am going to be your queen." And she hurried off down the road. Well, sure enough, after a little while, she came to a large grove of trees, and they did indeed seem to be laughing at her. And Manyara was so focused on getting to the capital and being the queen that she completely forgot what the old woman had told her. And she looked at those trees and she said, "Ha! Trees, I laugh at you!" And she laughed, and then she went on. And as she got closer, suddenly she could hear rushing water, and "I must be getting close to the river. I know there's a river between me and the capital city." And so she hurried even faster, and she saw that man with the head under his arm, and she just ignored him, and she thought to herself, "Well, queens only speak to the people they want to speak to." And she hurried off down the road towards the capital city. Well, it was beginning to get light about this time, and Nyasha was just waking up at home. And she woke up, and she got her hair dressed, and she put on her prettiest dress, and she got herself all ready to go to the capital. And while she was doing that, she was thinking, I really would rather stay here with my father and little Nyoka. I can't imagine never singing to little Nyoka again. That would be so sad. But father has said I must go to the capital and see if the king would like me to be his queen. So I will go. And just as she was finishing up getting dressed and getting herself ready to go to the capital, she heard a loud hubbub of voices and people calling out and everything outside. She went out to find out, and she found out that Manyara was missing. No one could find her. She was gone. Where had she gone? No one knew. And so they searched and they searched and they searched the whole village and they searched all of the fields. And finally, someone thought to search the path through the forest. And when they got to the path through the forest and they began to search, they found Manyara's footprints. And so they decided that they would just go ahead and continue to the city. And perhaps they would catch up with Manyara along the way. Well, as they walked through the forest, suddenly along the side of the road, Nyasha saw a little boy standing beside the road. And she looked at him and she said, "You must be very hungry." And she took the yam that she had brought for her own lunch and she gave it to the little boy. And the little boy nodded his thank you, and he disappeared into the forest. Well, a little further down the road, when they came to the place where the two roads crossed, he saw the old lady. And the old woman was simply standing there, and she simply looked at the group of people who were clearly a wedding party, and she simply pointed down the road to the city. And Nyasha looked at her and said, "Well, thank you very much." And she took a little pouch of sunflower seeds from her bag, and she gave them to the old woman as a thank you for showing them the way to the city. And when they continued on down the road, they reached that tall grove of trees. And this time the grove of trees did not appear to be laughing at all. In fact, as Nyasha walked by, the top branches of that grove of trees appeared to bow down to Nyasha as she passed. Well, very soon, someone said, "We're getting very close to the city now. It's just over that rise, just there, and across the river." And Nyasha, by this time, she was starting to get a little excited to see the city and to see what it might be like and to maybe meet the king. And so she ran ahead to the top of the ridge and she looked out and she said, "Oh, Father, look at how beautiful the city is. Truly a great king must live there. It's so beautiful." And the wedding party caught up and they went down the hill into the city. And just as they were entering the royal enclosure where the king lived, they heard terrible screams filling the air. And as they came into the royal palace enclosure, Manyara came running out of a house in the middle of the enclosure, and she was crying and she was tearing her hair and she was screaming. She saw them and she came over and she fell on Mufaro, her father, and she cried and she cried and she said, my father, don't let her go in there. Nyasha, don't go in, you must not go in there. There was a terrible snake with 5 heads, and he told me that he knew all of the terrible things that I have done and that he was going to eat me up. If I had not run away, he would have eaten me up. Nyasha, don't go in there. Don't go, father, don't let her go. Well, Nyasha didn't know what to do. But she knew that she had to go into that house because that was where the king lived. The guards had told them so. So she took a deep breath and she made herself feel as brave as possible, and she left Manyara with her father so that her father could calm her down, and she bravely went into that building. Well, when she went into the house, there was a very large, very ornate chair there, the king's throne. And sitting on that throne, what do you think she saw? It was not a giant 5-headed snake, no. It was her little friend Nyoka from the garden. And she laughed and she said, my friend, what are you doing here? How did you get here? And the snake said to her, I am here because I am the king. And right in front of her eyes, he changed from that little Nyoka the snake to a very tall, very handsome young man. And he said, I am the king. I am also the young boy that was hungry, to whom you gave a yam. And I am the old woman that you gave a bag of sunflower seeds to. But you know me best as Nyoka. And because you know me as Nyoka, I know that you are the most beautiful and the most worthy daughter in the land. And I would be very glad if you would be my queen. Well, of course, Nyasha said yes, and they started to plan the wedding right away, And the king's mother and his sisters took her into their house, and they brought out the best cloth, and they made her the most beautiful dress for her wedding. And Nyasha made the bread for the wedding herself out of millet that had been brought from her village. And everyone was invited from all of the villages around, and they all came, and there was a huge feast, and everyone had a wonderful time. And ever after that, if you asked Mufaro about his daughters, he would tell you he had the most beautiful and the most worthy daughters in the land, Nyasha, the queen, and Manyara, a servant in the queen's household. And that is the tale of Mufaro's beautiful daughters from the west of Africa. And on Wednesday, we are going to have a very special story. We need as many people to sign in and join us for the story on Wednesday as we can possibly get, because we need your help with that story. So on Wednesday at 3 p.m. Central Daylight Time on the Milledgeville Public Library of Illinois' Facebook page, join us for an interactive story. We're going to need your help, so we need as many people as we can get. I will hope to see you then, and I hope you have a good day. Bye!